and welcome back to the Entertainment Vortex. This is our spoiler review for Ready Player One. So, if you haven't seen the movie and you're still avoiding spoilers, there's a link in the description for our spoiler-free review, which I would suggest watching first. You definitely don't want this movie spoiled for you. Part of the fun is the surprise of a couple aspects. So, with that being said, everybody's been warned, so if you're still here, you're ready for spoilers.
Get out of here if you're not.
I'm just going to jump right in, because this movie, we'll talk about our favorite nostalgia moments a little later, but I want to dive into the meat of the movie first. So I want to talk about the story first. A lot of things that I've been hearing and a lot of things that we read when we came back from the movie were saying that the movie had kind of a thin story. I understand where some of the complaints are coming from, but I don't know if it's really that thin of a story. I know that you had mentioned it having a little bit of a story, but I mean, you only took about a half point away. So I think some of the other critics are really nailing it for having a super thin story. But I really don't believe that's the case. This movie has a gamer story, and what I mean by that is it uses, the whole movie's about tropes and nostalgia. The story has to have tropes in it because that's the whole point. The whole movie is just pointing out different things. Hey, remember that? Hey, remember that? Hey, remember that? Hey, remember that? I mean, there's literally a scene where a mad ball is thrown as a grenade. That's what this is about. It's about recognizing things and picking things out while having this neat coming of understanding story below it about even if the digital world becomes greater and greater and greater, reality is always better. And that's obviously the story. And I knew that was going to be the moral of the story going in, even from the trailers. It's pretty obvious what they're going to try to tell. Now, I feel they told it in a good way, though, by showing step by step how the creator of the Oasis learned this for himself. I feel you kind of don't just get told the moral, you experience the moral, and you learn it as Parzival's learning it. And I think that's the best way to do it. Artemis already knows, a lot of the characters already know, but you're following Parzival, and he does not know. He feels the cliche that the Oasis is the real world and reality is where he goes when he can't be. Because you're learning along with him, and because you are, I mean, unlike Parzival, learning how the world works at the same time, you kind of come to the same beats and realizations like he does. Then when you reach the end, where you have Holloway in his room talking about the meaning of the reality and that it's real and that, you know, this is what's important and that you wish you would have known that and et cetera, you really, at least for me, it really drove home. And you can tell it really drove home with Parzival as well, his character, with Wade. And that's important. If I had gotten to the end of the story and the moral was given and the climax where Parzival finally gets the Easter egg and meets Holloway, if that wouldn't have felt natural, if that didn't feel real and personal, I don't think the story would have worked. But because that felt so personal and because it felt like he was truly learning something and truly being taught and experiencing something new and changing, I feel the story was deeper than a lot of people are giving it credit for. With that being said, let's see what JB thought. What did you think?
So, as far as the story is concerned, it is definitely a hero's journey. Mm-hmm. You're not looking at something from the lens of a large group. Those people are auxiliary characters. They're there for, you know, story moving and for plot development, that sort of stuff. But really, you are in Wade's shoes. You are Parzival. That's been done before, but that's really all about you can say. I mean, it's not something where it's like, oh, every single last little detail is, you know, some kind of genre trope or some kind of cliched thing. There are a few cliches in the way that things happen, but it's not necessarily something where it's going to be like you're completely taken out of the movie. That's a breaker for me. That's when the story is bad and it's not something that's able to push forward and able to present a moral that makes sense based on the information that you're given. Because there are a lot of movies that do have those types of story issues. It's not slow, the pacing is practically perfect. Like you're constantly engaged in what's going on and not just for the fan service, and that's the important key. It's not something where you run into issues constantly with oh, this completely breaks your immersion. I mean, it's about living in a virtual world. The one thing you need to get right is immersion. You need to feel like this is a place that you want to be a part of, but you also need to follow that journey with Parzival and see at the end that reality is pretty great too, and that's something that you should work into your life. you know, finding a way to unplug yourself from the technology and enjoy the people that you're around.
Absolutely. The idea that his character learns, Holloway at the end, he says that he always had trouble and he was always scared of making personal connections in the real life. And that's why he created the Oasis. You kind of get that idea from Wade, from Parzival at the beginning as well, that he really doesn't know how to connect to people in real life. But he can connect to people in the Oasis because his avatar is more him than he is. By the end of the movie, he's completely transitioned. And you find that he's more Wade than he is Parzival. That, I think, is the key. That is the importance of the story. Now, with that being said, with your comment about pacing, I feel it depends on what type of movie viewer you are if you feel this is paced well. Because the end, the big fight at the end, if you're not someone that's enjoying all the nostalgia tropes, that's a long fight. Now, I was loving every second of it. It's like, oh my gosh, who's going to show up next? You know, this is crazy. But if you're not enjoying those nostalgia moments and those 80s and 90s characters, then that probably was pretty drawn out for you. But once again, it's Spielberg knowing his audience. He knows that the person that this movie is made for is someone that is going on the nostalgia trip, that is more Parzival than, what's the bad guy's name? Than the bad guy. I forgot the bad guy's name. But the viewer is more Parzival than the bad guy, and that's important because you have to be a lover of nostalgia. And you have to be a lover of these things from the past while still appreciating what's happening now. On to the next topic. Let's talk about the characters. So obviously there's a handful of important characters. We've already spoke somewhat about Parzival himself. But we've got Artemis, we've got the three supporting characters, which would be H, Daito, and what was the other guy's name? The kid? It starts with an S.
Yeah, I know it starts with an S. It's just not
the ninja. So you've got all these characters. I'm sure I'll know their names like the back of my hand after I've seen it a few more times, which I will be. You've got these characters, and I feel that the main characters, which of course is the bad guy, which for some reason I just want to call Krennic now because I found out it was the guy that played Krennic. Then you've got Parzival and Artemis, which are, you know, kind of the focus, as well as IROC, which was hilarious.
T.J. Miller, man.
Yeah, hilarious character. But obviously we're focusing on Parzival. That's who we are in the movie. I thought he did a good job. I think that he was believable as someone that has that bravery inside of him, that's kind of scared of who he is and scared of what he represents, but kind of learns throughout the course of the story that he's something special like everybody else is. I like that. I like the hero's journey, as you put it, where he kind of grows into the hero. I also believe that Artemis was very strong. I feel that she had the personality to push him forward, better as a team than they are by themselves. And then the supporting characters, I think H was less a supporting character as much as he was a sidekick, or she was a sidekick. That character I feel was very well done. Just the fact that it turned out to be a woman was really cool, because talk about a gamer trope right there. They make a joke about Artemis being a 300-pound guy named Chuck, but it really turned out to be that person that said that was actually the opposite sex all along. I thought that was kind of funny, because that happens all the time. I mean, there's multiple games that I played female characters in as well. It's just whatever you make, you know? So, I thought that was kind of neat. I don't think I would do it in a game where it's kind of your second persona, but you know,
there are people that do that, that's for sure.
Each his own. I thought that was kind of cool. One of them turns out to be a small kid, so there are aspects about how they wrote the real-life character in duality with the in-game character that I really, really enjoyed, and it felt real. I love the line the small child says, "I'm not going to put a sign on me that says I'm 11 years old, kill me first." And I thought that was hilarious. That was good stuff. Long story short, after I've given the long story, the characters were well written and they were likable, aside from the villains. And that's important because you've got this troop, this clan, so to say, that you kind of have to like all the characters and be on their side and be rooting for them for this story to work. And I was. Every single one of them, I loved it. When Daito kneels down in the van, I was just like, oh my god, his entrance is going to be so amazing, and we'll talk about that later. But there are moments with each character, even the ones you know very little about, that really work well based off what they give you. And the villains were good too. I mean, you only really have two. I mean, you've got Finale, his sidekick, but she was basically just a sidekick with a gun. But the main bad guy that I keep wanting to call Krennic, he was really good. He had that kind of business evil thing going where he wasn't like physically evil. He wasn't shooting everybody. He wasn't that kind of bad guy. He was just kind of the evil plans upon plans kind of bad guy, power hungry, and I think it worked really well. Plus, him having the avatar of Superman with the spit curl, that is perfect, so perfect. talk about a duality of his personality to the character, and it so makes sense that's who he would choose. That is great. And then IROC, the second he opened his mouth, I knew that character was going to be a gem, because the first thing out of his mouth is hilarious about his neck hurting and stand on this side. And just great. And he's got the giant skull on his chest you can see through, and just great stuff. Cliche within a trope, but yet not cliche within a character, and I think that's super important.
I mentioned them during our standard review. The characters are played really well. I don't think it's something that's going to be anything that will be talked about during award seasons or anything like that, but they're characters that stick with you. Mm-hmm. The dialogue that they have back and forth as they're kind of starting off you with Parzival kind of being a lone wolf. You know, he's got his friends, but he's, it's strict. I don't do clans. I'm by myself. That sort of a thing.
Very
and as the story progresses, he allows people to come in. Those characters are allowed to shine more and more every scene that they're in. You find out that H isn't into horror films, and you find out, things about Artemis's character when you meet her in real life. You find out that, the reason why she exists in this world and why she goes to Oasis to escape is because she has issues with her appearance. She has a birthmark over her eye that causes her real-world strife, so she goes to escape the way that she looks. Like I said, the character who's 11, he goes there to be, considered more of, a grown-up person, because he has skills and he wants to show off what he can do. It's really interesting the way that all these characters come together and they create this team. It is a trope in itself, as far as if you watch a lot of Spielberg films, because having that group of people that become better as a whole than they are as separate parts is something that you see in a lot of those films. Even something like Saving Private Ryan. Mm-hmm. You have a group coming together for essentially the greater good in order to show what they can do, and they're better as a group than they are as separate parts. The villains are not too terrible. You see what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing. They don't have a whole lot of motivations other than money, which in a world that looks as rough as this one does on the outside in the actual reality, you can definitely see why someone would want to try to get some money,
I mean, that's more than money, though, because controlling the Oasis in that world is also power.
Yes.
So, I mean, basically this person wanted to take over the world. I mean, he's cliche in that sense, but he makes more sense in the world we were given. What did you think of IROC?
IROC is definitely going to be a fan favorite. His character design, you don't actually ever get to see TJ, which I was a little disappointed. I wanted to see TJ. The actual character design of his avatar is excellent. You don't expect to see what's happening until he utters that first line, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I didn't even know that TJ Miller was in this. But it's a typical TJ Miller character. Every other line is a quip, and those are great. They are a nice comedic relief. But his character also is pretty tough, and that's also a good thing as well. I don't know how things would go for him IRL, but in the game, like I said, having a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills has put him in a very powerful place, and I feel like that he does a lot with that, just for the most part, just for himself, just it looks like for the lulz, and that's definitely a real-life gamer trope for sure. There are people out there who are just looking to do things for the lulz.
Yep, just wants to get his character ahead, which is what he was doing. Oh yeah, the next topic we've got to talk about is going to be our favorite nostalgia moments. This movie is chock full of them. My favorite nostalgia moment from this is, I mentioned earlier, it's Daito's entrance in the major fight. I mean, honestly, he flies in Serenity and then turns into a Gundam. And they even go far enough to give him the freeze pose in midair as the Gundam. So, I mean, this is just oozing with amazing. This is just great. That was my favorite. There's a lot of little things like the Mad Ball and, her pulling the Gears of War gun out and little things that were cool, but nothing beats his entrance. That was amazing. How about you?
There are a lot of small things that you pick up here and there that are absolutely hilarious and that just have like oh, I can't believe that just happened kind of moments. There are a lot of horror references, which, as you can tell, horror is kind of my thing. You have some characters are Freddy Krueger, some of them are Jason Voorhees. There's a scene with Chucky. It's the one F-bomb in the movie, and it's absolutely hysterical. Being a big fan of horror, my favorite scene from this movie was when they enter the world of The Shining. It was something that I didn't see coming. Our editor was sitting next to me in the theater, and he was like, "Oh wow!" I was like, and I felt the same. I was like, you took the words right out of the back of my head, and it was just, the way that they recreated it and how they used like the typewriter to show like what the timer was as far as the keys were concerned, and then having H follow the ball and meet the twins, and then go through the whole 237 scene with the naked woman who turns into the old crusty lady. Just priceless. Everything about it, like I said, they took something that is truly terrifying as far as if you're sitting down to watch cinema, and made it a romp, made it absolutely hysterical, and also gave you those nice little pieces of nostalgia. You have the guy who created... No, the guy who created the game.
Oh, Holloway.
Yeah. You have Holloway in the picture, just like Jack Nicholson is at the end of The Shining, and it's like just little tiny things that show that there was a lot of love put into that scene in particular, and I loved it. It was something that was completely unexpected for me, and it caught me off guard in the best way.
No, that was really cool. That is a wow moment when they open the theater and you're in the lobby, and like, even I went, whoa! Like, that is awesome! That was really neat. There's a lot of moments like that in this movie, a lot of little wow moments where you just get really excited when the little things you see, and in that case, the big things you see. I have to talk about the special effects, too. I mean, I'd say a majority of this movie was special effects, was CG, it was computer generated. Man, I mean, just the race at the beginning was mind-boggling. There's so many cars and there's so much going on. This is why I want to see it on like Blu-ray so much, because I want to slow it down and see what was happening. I mean, you've got King Kong and flipping cars, and it's like the T-Rex, and it's like so much going on at any given time. You don't know where to look, and that's amazing. Plus the fight at the end, I mean, you've got hundreds of people on screen at any given time in that fight, and you know that each one of them has some nostalgic avatar. So I just can't wait to pause it. I'm sure within 24 hours we'll have screenshots online where we can pick people out, but I can't wait to do that kind of stuff because there's so much detail put into this. And it's so awesome. And then I also have to mention, just because this really helped me get into the movie, the character of Parzival, he designed his avatar pretty much exactly how I design all my avatars. So that really helped me. That was, I had mentioned it in a pop culture video before. It's why I picked up the Pops before I even saw the movie, because he looked like he'd be one of my characters. So that really helped me. And I feel that a lot of gamers are going to find that one of the people in that group is playing the trope they would play. And that really helps you personally attach yourself to these characters. So I think the CG work in this was just fantastic. What do you think?
Stunning to behold. A world that feels like it's something that you would want to dive into in your actual life. If this place existed, everybody would be doing it. You know, it's something that, like I said, it gives you such a level of creation and also some structure. You know, you get to kind of live your life through this, but also it just kind of turns everything up to 11. You have these little like quests and stuff that you can go on, and you can meet new people, and there are these big raids and death matches and races and all these different activities that you can do. It's something where you could get lost in it, and you can see the reason why the world has become the way that it has because of this. It's just so immersive. Nothing looks super over the top fake. I mean, it is meant to be a game, but it feels real.
I mean, there's even aspects that aren't a game, like the vacation world they show at the beginning where you just go lay on a beach in Hawaii. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Absolutely.
Yeah, the characters definitely have like an Avatar type look to them, where they're not meant to look super over the top like humans, but they don't have any issues with like looking strange or out of place. The way that they talk and the way that they emote, it's just excellent. Like I said, it's you can tell that they took into consideration that part of the getup that they have to wear in order to go into this world has, you know, facial, you know, recognition and detection in order to, you know, truly emote what the actual person is feeling. Those are little things that you can pick up on that are just excellent. The fight scenes are all really well choreographed, and like you're saying, there are so many little characters you can pick up in there. You know, you see your definite sprinkling of like Master Chiefs, and you know all the really popular characters you're going to see more than one of.
Characters in there.
Yeah, because everybody wants to be those things because those are popular. But it's all the little niche ones, the little like I'm a super big fan of this, or I'm a super big fan of that. Those are the ones that I'm going to want to look out for when I see it again.
Absolutely. And there was one line in the movie when they were kind of giving you your 3-4 sentence explanation of why the future is like this, where they said people stopped trying to fix things and just trying to out-survive it. And I feel that is a huge point in this. It's one line in the movie, but it's almost a warning. Like, if you just allow bad things to happen and allow it to become the status quo, this is where you end up. You end up with a reality that doesn't matter, and everybody trying to escape that reality until they die. And that, while like I said, they didn't really focus on it, is one hell of a powerful comment. Keep that in mind. That's the big lesson we should take from this. I do want to talk about a couple of the twists. There weren't a lot of twists in this, but there were a couple. The co-creator, Simon Pegg's character being the butler guy, I thought was great. I thought that was really neat. The way he flips him the quarter, that ends up being an extra life, which is very Scott Pilgrim. And then the way that he flips it in real life to find out that that's who he was, and he does the voice. I thought that was really cool. And he says that he didn't know the answer, so he couldn't cheat. He liked what was happening. He liked him, and he wanted to win. Almost a Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory kind of vibe. I dug that. You can even see nostalgic moments from other movies in the movie story, like I said, Charlie in the Chocolate Factory and things like that. That you get these moments that are very similar, but it just makes it feel more familiar. It just makes it feel good. And I like that aspect of it. Like I said, the whole thing just felt comfortable was the term I used in the non-spoiler review. And the more I think about it, the more I feel that way. That the movie just feels like I was home. And that's why I gave it the perfect score. Once again, you see Steven Spielberg do movies, as other directors do, but he's really good at taking a culture, kind of like Disney does with their animated movies. They take a culture that they might not necessarily be part of, and then they learn everything they can to do that culture justice. While this might not have been a culture from a specific country or something, this is absolutely a culture. And they did it absolute justice. And that says a lot. A lot. Were there any twists you saw that were really crazy for you?
I'm trying to think, because there were more twists. I'm just trying to remember what they were.
I mean, we have her having the scar, and actually you can see it on her avatar, Artemis. There's H being a woman. That was a big one. The character we can't think of the name of being a kid. That was pretty cool. Him leaving his password on a Post-it note. Our day job is in tech support, so that's freaking hilarious for us. That is absolutely hilarious, but so on point, because he's totally the kind of guy that would have his password on a freaking Post-it note, because IT got sick of him calling and told him to put his password on a Post-it note.
Now, there is I would say that it's somewhat of a twist at the end when they're trying to resolve and get to the Easter egg. Essentially, IOI starts playing Atari games to try to beat the final challenge. And when they get to the actual game, they're trying to play this game to beat it. But in reality, they should be playing to try to find an Easter egg because it's fitting with the story. You know, it's about the journey.
Yeah.
And that's how you find the Easter egg in this game, by finding the Easter egg in Adventure for Atari. That was something that was a little bit different and a little bit interesting, because normally with these types of storylines, you are trying to get to the end point. This story definitely is more about the journey is more important than the destination.
And I understand that was supposed to be a metaphor for life, but I almost feel the literal concept is a good message as well, because nowadays there's so many gamers that are all about just beating the game and moving to the next game, but there are also gamers that just enjoy playing, that they want to explore, and they want to live in one game for a long period of time. And it just kind of goes to show the different types of gamers, that you don't have to rush to end game and rush to the end level. You can just take your time and enjoy yourself. So that's a neat, nerdy moral that I'm going to take from this, but that might be because I'm one of the people that just kind of enjoys the game. But I like that a lot. There's also an extra point at the end that I ended up, when we were talking about it before, I found out that they're actually writing a second book right now. So I guess this is going to be expanded on. Holloway's character says he's not alive. I mean, he's not there, he's not dead. And then when Parzival asks him, "What are you then?" he just walks away. So, I mean, we had theories that maybe he downloaded his consciousness into the system. I mean, they obviously have technology that's pretty high, so that's possible, but I want to know where that's going, because they wouldn't have said that just for the sake of saying that. There's a point why that was said. You don't put things in movies for no reason. There's a point for that. I have a feeling it's wherever they're going, and I'm dying to know where they're going, because I want to see more of that character. I want to see more of Parzival and Artemis and how they're controlling the Oasis and what happens next, because the masses aren't just going to be okay with it and everything's just going to go the way it goes from now on. There'll be another conflict down the line, and I want to be there to see it. It's a good sign of a good movie is when you get to the end of the movie and you want to see more. So did you have any other points that we haven't hit on?
I don't think so. For the most part, we've covered everything. We've covered the story. We've covered the nostalgia and everything. And just kind of my final point that I want to make is that this kind of a movie is going to be something that's going to resonate with a lot of people. It felt, I would say, probably to both of us, like everything that we've ingested as far as pop culture and gaming and movies and literature, in all of these different things, everything we've ingested up to this point has been preparing us for a film like this. Just being able to do this without feeling just like clutter and fan service for the sake of those two things is something that's not easy to do. And I'm grateful that this was done in a way that was nuanced and well made, and that felt like a love letter to nerds. And we need more of those types of things. I know that there's been a resurgence in the past, I'd say about 10, 15 years. And it's made my life a lot easier to live. I'm sure yours as well.
Oh, yeah.
When the more casual person is able to, sit down and have a conversation with you about Star Wars.
I feel that if this movie was made back in the 90s, you wouldn't have had it as a blockbuster film. This wouldn't have been a huge release. And to your point, JB, is that's a big deal. It's pop culture and this nerd culture is kind of bleeding its way into mainstream society. And it has been for quite a while. Now it's a better chance that someone knows Star Wars and knows the Marvel movies and the Batman movies and DC and all that stuff more than they just aren't connected to it. There's more nerds out there at different varying levels than ever before. And because of that, this is the perfect time for this movie to release. And the fact that this can be a mainstream film that's banking on being one of the most profitable films, and Spielberg would take something like this on, almost validates some of the fandoms and the hobbies that I've had growing up, because I'm old enough to remember in the late 80s and the early 90s when you were the outcast if you had comic books at school or video games at school or magic cards or whatever it might have been. And I'm just so glad that that's not the way it is anymore, that nerds are more accepted and they're more mainstream. And this is just one more thing that tells me that that's the case. So when I said in our non-spoiler review that if you are someone that enjoys pop culture to go see this, I have a feeling that's going to be a majority of people. And that, to me, is fantastic. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We put out a minimum of 4 videos a week. We have movie reviews as well as Funko Pop videos when there's news and multiple game videos. We also have some giveaways coming up pretty soon for some games, so you don't want to miss out on that. If you're interested in a t-shirt, check the description below. We've got a link to get a t-shirt there. And we hope you'll follow us into the Vortex. We'll see you next time.